So it is Saturday. It is actually 6 days before I plan on going drifting. And this is what the car looks like. I decided I had about 3.5 weeks between drift events, and I decided it was a good time to fix all of the oil leaks that my car has. It's early season. It's just a good time to make sure that the car is good for the season. Now, the oil leaks that I had weren't terrible. However, any oil leak is a bad oil leak in the eyes of the track. So my leaks were contained in the sense that I run a tray underneath my car that catches any of the oil drips, right? But after a while of driving the car and the oil blowing around the bottom of the car, we end up with a lot of oil just soaking the whole bottom of the car, and it ends up, leaving drips. So I took the motor out and cleaned this all with engine degreaser. And then, so from there, after cleaning the engine bay, I moved on to doing the motor. Now, I didn't record any of the taking the motor out. It's fairly simple. The whole front end of the car comes off, right? The whole front comes off. There's all my front end pieces. It's a motor mount, 3 nuts and bolts for the drive shaft. There's an O2 sensor. There is a reverse switch and the shifter linkage. That's what I did under the car. Oh, and pulled a slave off of the trans and the downpipe. Return line, fuel filter, and then I disconnect the steering so I can just pull this down and out of the way. Otherwise, this joint hits the oil pan. And then I just use this crane and lift it up and out. Alternatively, you can drop it from the bottom using the lift and just rest the whole subframe on a table. So, oil leaks, right? I have a leak at the oil pan. Ooh, as I slip and break my leg. A leak at the oil pan here at the, this thing, dipstick. I could never get the right O-ring to fit it, so it always leaked a little bit. And especially with drifting, with the oil sloshing back and forth in the pan and, running the oil a little bit more full than you need to, it always leaked out a little bit. It got to a point where it wasn't really leaking anymore, but I figure I should fix that problem. As you saw, I have the oil pan off. It's not the first time I've had the oil pan off this motor. I had it off when I did the initial turbo kit. Not to do a drain or anything, but there was some hairline cracking in the oil pan. So I just had my fabricator, while he was there working on the car, just touch up any cracks that were there just to make sure that it was going to be okay. He also, while we had the oil pan off, did a couple tack welds on the oil pump nut. He did this 7 years ago now, and it is still looking good as the day he did it. There's no play in the shaft, and everything is still tight. I would still love to add a tensioner onto this, but that is going to be for another day or another motor, however. So as you see, I have the front timing cover off. One of the things I wanted to do was figure out my Vano situation. It rattles extremely bad. So I have a couple extra ones to choose from, but I just don't know what I'm looking for in it being good or bad, because it has play, right? In and out. So there's some play. I don't know what is good or bad. This is supposedly a rebuilt one, and it has similar, if not more, play than the one that I just took off my motor. So I just don't know. I know I have like 2 or 3 more that I have taken off of parts motors, but I'm gonna go check those ones and see what they're like. But if they're all making the same noise, I might as well just put on the one that's on my car, that was on my car, because I know that it works already. So might as well just leave the thing on there that works. Yes, it rattles a little bit, but guess what? The Vanos still works. So don't fix it if it's not broken, right? But the other oil leak that I've had, and this one has been since I turboed the car, when we did, you see I have an MLS head gasket, a multi-layer steel head gasket, and it has a thick, chunky plate here that decreases my compression. So when we did the turbo kit, instead of doing like, rods and pistons and building a motor, I just lowered the compression on the motor to make it safer to handle boost. Now, it doesn't make it necessarily safer. You still have to have proper fueling and timing to make sure you're not going to burn anything down. But it does make things slightly safer, and it gives you a little bit more wiggle room to prevent detonation. But when we did that, you can see there is 1, 2, 3 bolts in doing a head gasket job that bolt into the front timing cover. And on the third one, it snapped on me. So this one went in fine, torqued it down. This one went in fine, torqued it down. This one went in fine, tried to torque it down. And I either didn't hear the torque wrench click or feel it click, but it snapped on me. And I looked at Sean, my fabricator, who was helping me do the job at the time, and I was like, "What do we do?" We just did this head gasket job, just torqued down all of the head studs, and now I need another. I need to take the front timing cover off, even though the head bolts into the front timing cover. And the reason that my oil pan is off and the reason my motor is out to try and fix this is because the timing cover is sandwiched between the head and the oil pan. So in order to remove the timing cover, you need to remove the front bolts from the oil pan, and you need to remove the top bolts from inside the head, inside the valve cover. But I was also running into an issue where, oops, that's the bottom, where I had this sticking out. So I couldn't just slide it directly out towards me. It had to come down a little bit. So I had to take the oil pan off. Now, luckily, BMW uses a metal and rubber oil pan gasket. So my oil pan gasket should be good. I'm still going to throw a little bit of RTV on there. I'm not going to put as much RTV on as I did previously when I did it, because it's a mess. There was definitely some in my oil pickup. Not enough to be concerning, but there was definitely some in my oil pickup. So I'm just going to clean up all of this stuff. Oh, I wanted to show this on camera too. All those years of driving with it leaking out of this corner because this was not tightened or clamped down to the head properly. And look, it just screws out with my finger. So luckily, timing cover is still good. I've got nothing to worry about there, but I did buy new hardware right after this happened, which I've been holding on to for the past 6.5 years. But as long as everything goes back together smoothly, I should have the motor back together and ready to go back in the car at some point, either tomorrow or early next week. I am planning on going and drifting on this coming Friday at Lebanon Valley and then Saturday at Lock City Drift. So it's not necessarily crunch time because it's still 6 days away, but I would like to have it done long before and be able to drive it and test it and put it through its paces, because obviously I still am going to have to bleed the cooling system. I got to put power steering fluid in it and rebleed the power steering. I have a new shaft for this here. I noticed that this was wiggling when I took it off. So just like little things that I need to like go through. The other day I did get tires in. I got some 651 Sports. I'm going to try them out, see what the hype is all about. Everybody seems to love them, so let's see how they do on my Turbo E36. I did get some for the rear too. I got them in a, what is it? A 235 45 17. Now normally I would just run an all season, which I actually have the Accelera PHI-R on there now in the rear. So normally I would just run an all season. E36s make enough grip that like you don't necessarily need to run a 200 treadwear tire to have fun drifting it. I still have plenty of fun with my 400 to 500 treadwear tires that I normally run on the back of my car. And it just makes it easier on the drivetrain. You're not pushing the car as hard to keep the tires spinning, and they just generally last longer. So I'm just going to see what the hype's all about. I got a good deal on the 651 Sports. So I think I didn't even pay $600 for all 6 of the tires. So curious to see how they do, but definitely want to get back to putting this thing all back together. I'm just at the point right now where I've got to clean up all of the old gaskets and the old gasket material and make sure everything is clean and find the hardware that I bought 6 years ago that is going to replace this broken guy. While I'm here, I'm doing an oil change on the Scion. This thing has been so sick. I had a half a tank of gas on Sunday, and I was like, well, let me just see, because that's normally when I get gas, is around a half a tank. I was like, well, let me just see how much it's going to cost me to get, a full tank of gas. And from a half a tank of gas to a full tank of gas, and not just like, oh, I just put $25 in it. The pump clicked off at $24.99, and it was a full tank of gas. And that full tank of gas, I say it lasted me 6 days, but it lasted longer than that because I filled up again at a half a tank. And when I did the math, this thing got 38.4 miles to the gallon. Isn't that crazy? So with that math, It cost me $25 to drive a half a tank, and generally a half a tank is going to last me 6 to 7 days, or 5 to 7 days, I should say, which puts me at like 30, maybe $35 to drive the car for the week, which is a massive, massive, massive improvement from this thing, which I would have to put $40 in almost every other day. So loving the savings, loving that it's a 4-cylinder 5-speed. Like, it's not enjoyable to drive per se, but it's still fun to shift through gears. It's very forgiving. The shifts are super easy. I don't need to use the clutch to shift it. Everything works super well in the drivetrain, and it just feels like a good car. Like, I put new tires on it, on these wheels, and didn't even balance them, and there's not even any shake. Like, I was driving down the highway I went up to 80 miles an hour, and there was not any shake in the steering wheel, and the thing drives straight. Like, you just can't beat an early 2000s Toyota product. They just do not make cars like they used to. But I got to get back to that BMW. So it's been a super fun day. I did lots of cleaning. See, the timing cover has been cleaned or removed, cleaned, and replaced. I was able to replace the bolt that was in here. It fought me extremely hard. So what ended up happening is I took the timing cover off. I cleaned it up. I was going to put it back on. I put every bolt. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 bolts that hold the timing cover on, plus the 3 in the head, plus the 4 on the oil pan. So I had all of these on the front of the timing cover. I had this one bolted, and I had this one bolted. Not tight, but just I was trying to make sure that everything was going to line up and I could get it started. And when I tried to get this last final one started, I realized I had a problem. Now, being a multi-layer steel head gasket, there is layers of steel on the top and layers of steel on the bottom. And one of those layers decided it was going to get caught up in between the cover and the head when I tried to reinstall the cover. So I had to take every bolt back off. That's why you can see this little tiny bead of silicone across the top here, simply because I am not going to do my head gasket because a layer of steel on the timing cover failed. So I couldn't get that bolt started, and what ended up happening is this. Because the layer of steel from the head gasket that was out of place blocked the hole and destroyed the bolt. So I ended up having to take everything back apart. Like I said, I could not get this bolt to rethread. Couldn't do it. It wouldn't work. The timing cover, however, I was able to run a tap through this hole, and the threads cleaned up beautifully, and the new bolt worked, which is funny because this was actually a new bolt. But I used the length of that bolt to take one of these, because there's 3 timing cover bolts that go into the head. There is this one, which is the shortest. There's this one, which is a medium one. And then this one back here is a long one. So as you can see, I still have the old long one that came out of my motor. And I ended up using the old medium one to basically remake the small one. So you can see that. I dig this one out of the trash so I can show you. Perfect, right on top. So basically what I did is I took one of these like this and I marked off where it needed to be threaded to. I chopped it at the right length. Actually, that's a lie. So it wasn't this long. It was probably only to here, but it only had a threaded portion up to basically how long this bolt was. So what I did was I left the threaded portion on and I used that to square up my threads. So I took the long bolt and I ran it through a die. I put it in the vise and I just ran the long bolt through the die and I made threads on the shank. And I made the threads until it matched where the threads stopped on the short one, so that I essentially had the same shank size as the short one, but I had all this extra threaded portion. Then I used an angle grinder to cut it to length, shape it, and then I ran it through here one more time just to make sure that it was going to, thread easily. So, crisis averted. I fixed the bolt that I just destroyed, and then it was time to put the timing cover back on. Upon putting everything back together, I lost one of the bolts. I don't know how, but I lost one of the bolts. So as you can see, I didn't feel like digging through my factory hardware to try and find a factory one. But as you see, there's one shiny brand new bolt. Not a big deal. I'm probably the only one that's ever going to notice it, but I know that I have one in that container right there. That's all my factory BMW hardware. I know that I have one, but I don't feel like digging through it right now. I've already been here for way longer than I expected to today, so I'm honestly probably going to call it a night and try and come back earlier tomorrow so that I can finish this up. So all that really needs to get done from here is I need to put my oil pan back on, and I need to put the Vanos back on, and I need to put the valve cover back on. And I haven't decided what valve cover I'm going to go with. I think I may get rid of this OBD1 cover and go to a plastic OBD2 one, just to see how it's going to do. This it's warped, and they don't really make a good option for the OBD1 valve cover without spending a ridiculous amount of money. And I have a couple OBD2 valve covers, so as long as I can get the car to run good with the OBD2 valve cover and get the OBD1 coil packs to work in the OBD2 cover, or get my car to run with the OBD2 coil packs, because I currently have OBD1 coil packs, which I'm pretty sure they run the same, so it shouldn't really be a difference. But that's where I'm at. I don't really have I have tons more that I could do tonight, but I really don't feel like doing it tonight. I was halted partially part of the way through doing this job by trying to sell our and when I say our, I say our, it's not mine, it's Louie's, but our project car that we had picked up. And what do you know, I had the thing running yesterday. It ran last weekend. It's been moved around multiple times at the shop, and the E36 that I did the rear fender flares on, that one. So we are trying to sell that, and we had it sold. We agreed on a price with a guy. He already came and looked at it, already came and drove it, and he was just going to come pick it up today. Well, wouldn't you know, the starter decided that it wasn't going to work anymore. And we tried pop starting it a few times, but with it, it's got a crack in the intake boot, so it needs a few revolutions for it to actually fire up. So we couldn't get it pop started. So I ended up wasting probably an hour and a half of my time that I could have been doing to work on this, trying to get that car to start so that I could, get rid of it. But it didn't happen, so that's just another thing on the list of things to do. Either they're going to try and haggle the price down because they have to put a starter in it, or I'm going to put a starter in it, which isn't really a big deal. It's just not something that I want to be doing on a car that is literally already sold. Literally always something with cars. But I've got the oil pan all cleaned up. I've got the motor all cleaned up. It's ready for the oil pan to go on. I've got the valve cover mating surfaces all cleaned up and ready to be reassembled. One other thing that I noticed is I've got an awful lot of leaking going on. Let me see if I can find my light. There's an awful lot of wetness back here on the oil filter housing. So it doesn't look like it's the oil filter housing itself that's leaking, but I did go ahead and get an oil filter housing gasket. I'm just gonna pull it off. It's 6 bolts, motor's already out of the car. I just have to, the belt is off already, so all I have to do is take the alternator off, take the tensioner off, and then there is 6 bolts that go into the motor this way. And then basically what I want to do is I want to take it off, reseal it, and just go through all of these attachments on the back of it. So the Vanos feed line, the oil pressure sensor, and my turbo feed line. I just want to go through them all and make sure everything's tight, make sure all the crush washers are good, and make sure that I don't have any leaks there. Because once I get this oil pan on and this motor all sealed back up, I need to get over onto here and clean this side, because this side of the motor is also quite crusty from the dipstick leaking. But that's going to do it for today. I've had plenty of car fun. And by car fun, I mean I hate cars. But I'll catch you guys tomorrow.